We're going to dig into this a little bit more now with Mike Huckabee, former Arkansas governor and former 2016 presidential candidate. Governor, always great to see you.
Well, thank you, Jackie. What an interesting saga. I've just come to love Elon Musk. I mean, this is a guy who has the money. He can do what he wants, and he wants to do something that he doesn't need to do, but he thinks needs to be done, and he's willing to spend his own money to do it. How refreshing is that?
It's very refreshing, and Musk would tell you this is a battle over free speech. It's not necessarily financial. I mean, he has made money off of his investment in Twitter and could possibly, if he takes the company private and then brings it back with sort of a new platform, new rules to the game, if you will. But the thought here is essentially that he's watched what's happened at this company. He's seen how essentially social media companies across the board have stifled messaging from conservatives. And he feels that free speech is a very important part of our system overall for democracy. Your thoughts?
Well, he's pretty much a libertarian. And in that particular vein, Jackie, what I think he's saying is that the purpose of Twitter is to provide a public square and let people go and stand up on the soapbox and speak. If someone doesn't like what was said, then they get to be on the soapbox. But you don't get to say, oh, we're going to let everyone speak as long as they agree with a point of view that is very narrow and represents less than half of the American public. When you say that an elected president can't be on Twitter, but the Ayatollah can, when you allow the Saudis free access, but you don't allow Americans who say something that you disagree with, a lot of people scratch their heads and say, wait a minute, what happened to the idea of free speech? So this is like the telephone company saying, we don't like the conversations some people are having, so we're not going to let them have a telephone. Or maybe the cable company says, we don't like some of the shows some people are watching. We're going to cut off their cable. Yeah. And most of us would say, that's not how it works. But that's how Twitter works, and Elon Musk recognizes it, and he wants to put a stop to it. Good for him.
And it's really interesting because, I mean, in my view, as I look back at the history of Twitter, from a business perspective, it really was President Donald Trump that revolutionized it, right? He did make it a town square by getting up on the soapbox himself in many ways. And he was one of the first, of course, as you were alluding to there, to be banned from that platform when the CEO and the company didn't like what he had to say. You could say that it was suppression of conservative thought. And we're sort of watching this. We saw it with Hunter Biden, the laptop, before the last election. I mean, he opened up the floodgates in this way that we've never seen before, and then they tamped it down. And it actually hasn't been good for the brand. A lot of investors say that Elon Musk is doing the right thing here to open it up again, and that's really what Twitter is supposed to be about. He will unlock value.
Well, and I think you've made a very important point. This was not just suppressing speech of conservatives. It was also suppressing the speech of news organizations like the New York Post, whose story's now been verified, even authenticated by no less than the New York Slimes and the Washington Compost. They've had to acknowledge that the story was correct all along. There are many other stories as it relates to COVID that have turned out to be true, but they were censored by Twitter along the way. And I think what Elon Musk is saying is, look, what's the harm in letting people speak? And if it really is as horrible and ridiculous as some people claim, the marketplace will shut it down. That's how it's supposed to work. So I'm really hopeful that Elon Musk will get control of Twitter. You mentioned Donald Trump. Twitter was on its way out. It was becoming the MySpace of the social media world until Donald Trump rescued it and brought it into such prominence that now it became this news delivery feature. But then Twitter got too big for its britches and decided that it's just going to tell people, well, you can speak, but you can't. You have to agree with our express view. And you wonder, who the heck are these people? Some 20-year-old nerd sitting in Silicon Valley in his pajamas and eating Cheetos all night? That's the guy that gets to make this decision? I don't think so.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because Musk obviously saying that if his bid isn't accepted by the board, essentially that the game is rigged here, right? The board does have this obligation to, it's fiduciary responsibility to the shareholders, and he did offer a pretty good price of a little bit more than $54. Yeah. They're holding him off. They're fending him off with the poison pill. He may be able to come back and raise his bid. He may team up with a private equity company to be able to do that. But having said that, at a certain point, if they continue to reject him, they're not acting in the best interest of their shareholders, and it will be very evident.
Well, and then you may have a shareholder lawsuit where people who are shareholders, including Elon Musk, sues them and says they are violating their fiduciary responsibility, which they are.
Yeah.
Because they are responsible to make sure that the stockholders are the ones who are given the primary consideration. That's not happening right now. And they could put themselves in a world of hurt where Elon Musk ends up buying it for a fire sale price because they've ruined the company.
Yeah, we're going to have to see what happens. A lot of people invested in the company when they found out that Musk was taking his initial stake, that's what was breathing new life into it. And you saw the stock up today as well. I would say that's because of the enthusiasm there, that people think, Elon is not going to back down here, and they're continuing to buy into this. And so this board could be in trouble if they don't have his backing as well, if all of a sudden they reject him and he starts dumping all of his shares. Mike Huckabee, great to see you. Thank you.